My cousin screamed you tricked her after finding out my grandma had left her apartment to me. So I just looked her in the eye and said, "So where were you during her final days? The Bahamas?" I am at 31, sitting in my grandmother's apartment, my apartment now, trying to process what's happening with my family. My name is Daniel, and I need to share this story because I'm starting to question my own sanity. My grandmother, Eleanor, passed away 3 months ago. She was 89, sharp as a tack until the very end, and one of the most important people in my life. Growing up, I spent every summer at her place, a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Boston that she'd owned since 1978. The smell of her lavender potpourri, the sound of her old clock ticking in the hallway, the way sunlight streamed through her lace curtains, these memories shaped my childhood. After college, I moved to Philadelphia for work. The 4-hour distance meant I couldn't visit as often as I wanted, but I made it a point to come up at least once a month, more during holidays. We talked on the phone every Sunday without fail. I helped her set up video calls during the pandemic so we could have virtual dinners together. When she had her hip surgery 2 years ago, I took 3 weeks off work to stay with her during recovery. My cousin Rachel, on the other hand, lived 20 minutes away in Cambridge. She's always been the golden child of the family, prettier, more outgoing, married with 2 kids. She visited Grandma maybe once every 2 months, usually quick drop-ins between errands. I'm not judging her for it. Everyone has their own life and responsibilities. What I am judging her for is what happened after the will reading. Grandma left me the apartment. She left Rachel $50,000 and some jewelry. The rest of her modest estate was divided among other family members and charities. The lawyer said Grandma had been very specific about her wishes, updating her will just 6 months before she passed. Rachel's reaction was immediate and vicious. "This is wrong," she said, right there in the lawyer's office. "I was here. I was the one who lived close by. How many times did you even visit in the last year?" "I visited every month," I said quietly, still processing the grief of losing Grandma and the shock of inheriting her home. "Every month," Rachel laughed bitterly. "I drove past her building every day, every single day. Daniel, my kids drew pictures for her. We brought her groceries." When I asked, genuinely confused, "Grandma always said she barely saw you." That's when Rachel's mask really slipped. She was confused near the end. You know that. She probably thought your monthly guilt visits were more than they were. The lawyer interrupted to remind us that Eleanor had been evaluated by her doctor just 2 months before her death and was found to be completely mentally competent. The will was ironclad. Rachel stormed out, but not before saying, "This isn't over. You might have manipulated a dying old woman, but the family knows the truth." That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Rachel has been on a campaign to turn the entire family against me. She's been calling relatives, posting passive-aggressive messages on Facebook about family members who only show love when there's something to gain, and telling anyone who will listen that I stole the apartment from her. The truth is, I'm not even sure what to do with the apartment. It's worth probably $800,000 in today's market, but it's not about the money for me. It's about the memories, the connection to Grandma. I've been staying here on weekends, going through her things, crying over old photos, trying to process my grief. And instead of being able to mourn in peace, I'm dealing with Rachel's harassment. Last week she sent me a text. "A truly loving grandchild would have been there more. You know in your heart that apartment should go to someone who really cared." I wanted to respond with all the times I was there when she wasn't. During Grandma's surgery, during her recovery, during countless Sunday dinners, she cooked for me, even when I insisted on taking her out. I wanted to tell her about the nights I spent reading to Grandma when her eyes got too bad, about how I was the one who noticed she was getting confused about her medications and helped her organize them, about how I was the only grandchild who knew her stories about growing up in Ireland, who asked about Grandpa who died before we were born, who actually knew her as a person and not just as a free babysitter or a potential inheritance. But I didn't, because grief makes you tired, and I'm so very tired. Update 1 2 weeks later. I thought things couldn't get worse, but Rachel has escalated her campaign. She's now telling family members that truly loving grandchildren would have been there more often and therefore deserve the property more. She's created an entire narrative about how I abandoned Grandma in her final years. The breaking point came at my Uncle James's birthday dinner. I had not planned on going. Family gatherings had become nothing but minefields, but my mother convinced me that staying away would only make me seem guilty. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," she told me. "Eleanor loved you, and she made her wishes perfectly clear." The dinner began awkwardly, but everyone managed to stay polite. Then Rachel showed up with her husband Kevin and wasted no time putting on a show. "Oh, Daniel's here," she said loudly enough for the whole table to hear. "I'm surprised you could actually make time for family." I ignored the comment and kept talking with my uncle about his retirement plans. But Rachel was far from finished. During dinner, she started talking about how often she brought her kids to see Grandma. "We were there every single week," she said, while looking straight at me. "The kids loved their great-grandmother. It breaks my heart that they will never make more memories in her apartment because someone who only came around once in a blue moon ended up getting it." "That's enough, Rachel," my Aunt Susan said sharply. She was Grandma's younger sister and had always been fiercely protective of her. "Eleanor made that decision for her own reasons." "What reasons?" Rachel shot back. "Because Daniel talked her into it during his occasional visits? Because he made her feel guilty for not seeing him more often? A grandchild who truly cared would not have needed guilt trips. They would have simply been there." I calmly set my fork down. "I was there every month, Rachel, without missing a single visit. I still have every train ticket to prove it, and I have hundreds of photographs." Rachel laughed. "Of course you have photographs. You had to document your good deed, right? Meanwhile, I handled the everyday things, the boring things, doctor appointments, grocery shopping." "Name one," I interrupted. "Name one doctor's appointment you actually took her to." Rachel hesitated for a brief moment. "I drove her to plenty of appointments." "Then name one," I repeated, "because I can name every appointment she had over the last 2 years. Dr. Morrison for her hip follow-ups, Dr. Chan for her cardiology visits, Dr. Williams for her eye exams. I have every one of them written in my calendar because I either came to drive her myself or called to make sure she had transportation." The entire table fell silent. Rachel's face turned bright red. "You probably only know all that because you went through her belongings after she died," I answered quietly. "Dr. Morrison retired 6 months ago. Grandma was upset because he had been her doctor for 15 years. After that, she started seeing Dr. Patel instead." I looked directly at her. "Did you even know that, Rachel? Did you know she was nervous about seeing a new doctor? Did you know she was worried about her memory and asked me to come with her so I could help her remember everything she wanted to ask?" Rachel suddenly stood up. "This is exactly what I mean. You're trying to make yourself sound like the perfect grandchild, but where were you on ordinary Tuesday afternoons? Where were you when she just wanted someone to sit down and have coffee with? You cannot buy love with monthly visits, Daniel." My Aunt Susan stood up too. Sit down, Rachel, you're embarrassing yourself. But Rachel had already started gathering her things. You can all pretend this is fair, but we all know the truth. That apartment should have gone to the family who truly valued her, not someone who only cared about what she owned. After she stormed out, dinner continued in an uncomfortable silence. Finally, my Uncle Richard, Rachel's father, spoke. "I'm sorry, Daniel. She's struggling with her grief." I wanted to let it go, but I was exhausted. "We're all grieving, Uncle Richard, but I'm not going to apologize for loving my grandmother or for the fact that she loved me." Later that evening, several of my cousins who had been at dinner sent me text messages. Most of them were supportive and said they knew how close Grandma and I had always been. One message, though, stood out. It was from my cousin Aaron. "Rachel has been telling people that you pressured Grandma into changing her will. I don't believe her, but I thought you should know what she's saying." That night I sat alone in Grandma's apartment. It was my apartment now, even though it still did not feel that way, and I cried. I was not only grieving the loss of Grandma. I was grieving what Rachel was doing to her memory. Grandma was the strongest and most independent woman I had ever known. The idea that anyone could have manipulated her into doing something against her will was an insult to the person she was. I caught myself talking to her empty chair, the one where she always sat while knitting. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'm sorry your funeral has turned into this. I'm sorry Rachel is using your death as a weapon. I'm trying to handle everything the way you would have wanted, but I honestly do not know how much more I can take." Update 2. 3 weeks later, things had become much worse than simple family drama. Rachel had started bringing potential buyers to the apartment, claiming she was helping me do the right thing by giving it to someone who had truly appreciated Grandma. It all started last Tuesday. I was at work when Mrs. Wong, Grandma's neighbor in the building, called me. "Daniel, dear, there's a woman here with a few people. She's telling them she's showing Eleanor's apartment. She says she's family and that she has permission." I left work immediately and drove straight to Boston. By the time I arrived, Rachel was standing in the lobby with a couple who looked to be in their 40s, both dressed in business casual clothes. She was actually giving them a tour and pointing out the building's amenities. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded. Rachel turned to me with a sweet smile. "Oh, Daniel, I was just showing the Johnsons around. They're interested in buying a place in this neighborhood, and I figured it would help since you're obviously going to sell soon." "I'm not selling," I said firmly, "and you have absolutely no right to show my apartment to anyone." The couple immediately looked uncomfortable. The woman spoke first. "We were told the owner wanted to sell quickly. Are you the owner?" "Yes, I am," I replied. "And no, the apartment is not for sale. I'm sorry you've been misled." Rachel's fake smile disappeared. "He's just being stubborn," she told them. "Our grandmother owned this apartment, and he's keeping it out of spite even though he lives in Philadelphia." "Rachel, leave now or I'm calling the police." The couple wasted no time walking away. It was obvious they wanted nothing to do with our family argument. Rachel stayed where she was, glaring at me. "You can't keep this apartment forever, Daniel. It's worth far too much to sit empty while you only come here on weekends. Grandma would have wanted it to go to someone who actually needed it." "Grandma wanted me to have it," I answered. "That's exactly why she left it to me." She wasn't thinking clearly. She believed you visited more often than you actually did. If she'd been in her right mind, "Get out," I cut her off. "And if you bring another person here again, I'll get a restraining order." Rachel laughed. "You're really going to get a restraining order against your own family? That tells everyone exactly who you are. Cold, calculating." After she finally left, Mrs. Wong invited me into her apartment for tea. She had lived in the building for 30 years and had known Grandma better than almost anyone. "Your grandmother talked about you all the time," she said kindly. "Every Sunday after your phone calls, she'd tell me everything you were doing. She was incredibly proud of you." "Rachel keeps saying I wasn't here enough," I admitted, feeling like a little kid looking for reassurance. Mrs. Wong shook her head. "I saw you here far more often than any of the other grandchildren, and even when you weren't here, Eleanor never doubted how much you cared. She showed me every card you mailed, every picture from your video calls. Rachel? She came by maybe 4 times a year, and most of those visits were because she wanted something. That evening I hired a locksmith and had every lock changed. I also spoke with building security and explained what had been happening. The security guard, Mark, told me Rachel had shown up the previous week claiming she was helping prepare the apartment for sale. That was the moment I realized she wasn't going to stop on her own. She had convinced herself that the apartment belonged to her, and she was going to keep pushing until someone forced her to stop. Update 3. 2 weeks later, Rachel ignored every warning I had given her. She started finding new ways to interfere. She would come by while I was working in Philadelphia, tell the neighbors she was checking on the apartment for the family, and even contact real estate agents while giving them my phone number. Everything finally came to a head when I arrived from my usual weekend visit and found a "For Sale by Owner" sign taped to my apartment door. I had never been so angry in my life. I ripped the sign down and immediately called Rachel. "This is harassment," I said as soon as she answered. "I'm done being nice." "Oh, Daniel," she replied in that condescending voice she always used. "You're always so dramatic. I'm only trying to help you see reason. Do you even realize how much that apartment is worth? You could buy a beautiful house in Philadelphia and invest everything that's left. Instead, you're letting it sit there like some memorial." "It's not a memorial," I said. "It's my home." She laughed. "Your home? You already have an apartment in Philadelphia. This place is nothing more than your expensive weekend getaway. It should really—" I hung up before she could finish and called my lawyer. I had reached my limit. The following day I filed for a restraining order. I documented everything she had done, including the unauthorized showings, the repeated harassment, the fake sale signs, and the real estate agents she had contacted. My lawyer also sent Rachel a cease and desist letter stating that any further interference with my property would result in legal action. The family fallout was immediate. My phone would not stop ringing. Uncle Richard called me ungrateful. Aunt Karen accused me of destroying the family. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly felt the need to tell me how I should handle everything. Thankfully, not everyone took Rachel's side. Aunt Susan called to tell me she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Even my mother, who had tried to stay neutral the whole time, finally confronted Rachel's parents. "Eleanor left that apartment to Daniel because she wanted him to have it," she told them. "That's the end of the discussion. The court approved a temporary restraining order while we waited for the hearing. Rachel was ordered to stay away from the apartment building and to stop contacting me about the property. You would think that would have been the end of everything, but Rachel still had one last move to make." Update 4. The hearing for the restraining order took place last week. Rachel arrived with a lawyer and a thick folder she claimed contained proof that I had manipulated Grandma. Her so-called evidence included birthday cards I had mailed to Grandma over the years, photographs from my visits, and strangest of all, a list she had put together comparing how many times she and I had visited Grandma during the previous 5 years. "Your Honor," her lawyer began. "My client is not challenging the validity of the will. She believes there was undue influence. Eleanor was an elderly woman living alone, making her vulnerable to emotional manipulation by a grandson who knew exactly how to gain her trust." My lawyer responded by presenting Grandma's medical records, which clearly showed she was mentally competent. He also submitted statements from neighbors like Mrs. Wong describing how close Grandma and I were, along with the records I had kept of my visits, phone calls, and train trips. The moment that changed everything came when my lawyer introduced a letter Grandma had written to me 2 years earlier. I had completely forgotten about it. She gave it to me after her hip surgery when I stayed with her for 3 weeks while she recovered. In that letter, she thanked me for being there, for listening to her stories, and for treating her like a person instead of simply an elderly grandmother. Near the end, she wrote, "One day the apartment will belong to you, Daniel. Not because you've earned it by visiting me, but because you understand what this home means to me, and I trust you to protect that meaning." Rachel's lawyer tried to claim the letter proved I had been working toward getting the apartment for years, but the judge was not convinced. "What I see," the judge said, "is a grandmother expressing love and trust toward a grandson who clearly cared deeply for her. I see nothing that suggests manipulation or undue influence." The judge made the restraining order permanent. Rachel was ordered to stay away from the apartment building and to stop contacting me about the property. As we walked out of the courthouse, Rachel broke away from her lawyer, who tried to stop her, and came over to me one last time. "You may have won in court," she said, her eyes filled with tears, "but you lost your family. I hope that apartment was worth it." I looked at her for a long moment. For the first time, I did not see an enemy. I saw a cousin overwhelmed by grief who had chosen the wrong way to deal with it. "Rachel," I said quietly, "this was never about the apartment. Grandma left you money and her jewelry. She left Jessica her book collection. She left Tyler her piano. She gave every one of us something she believed we would treasure. I'm sorry you can't see that." "Easy for you to say," she replied bitterly. "You got the prize." "No," I said. "I got the responsibility. I became responsible for taking care of her home, protecting everything it meant to her, and carrying the weight of knowing she trusted me with something so important." "You think I won some kind of lottery?" Every morning I wake up in her bedroom, smell her perfume that still lingers, and remember she's gone. I make coffee in her kitchen and think about all the mornings we spent sitting there together. Every room reminds me that I can never talk to her again. I did not get a prize, Rachel. I was given the privilege of grieving in the place she loved most. Final update. 2 months have passed since the court hearing. Little by little, the family has started to heal, although I know some relationships may never be the same again. Rachel and I still do not speak, but my mother told me she has started seeing a therapist to work through her grief and anger. I truly hope it helps her. I have made a few changes to the apartment, but not many. I wanted to keep everything that made it feel like Grandma's home while slowly making it feel like mine too. I donated her clothes to her favorite charity, but I kept all of her knitting supplies. I replaced the old kitchen appliances, but her recipe box still sits exactly where it has for the last 40 years. I even planted a small herb garden on the balcony, something Grandma always talked about doing but never had the chance to start. I also made an important decision about my own life. I kept my job in Philadelphia, but I switched to working remotely 3 days each week. Now I can spend about half my time in Boston, creating my own memories in the apartment while preserving hers at the same time. My girlfriend, Olivia, has been incredibly supportive through all of this. We spend many weekends here together now. She never had the chance to meet Grandma, but she says she feels like she knows her through my stories and through the warmth of the home she left behind. Mrs. Wong has also become like another grandmother to me. Every Sunday we have tea together, and she shares stories about Grandma that I had never heard before. Just last week, she told me that years ago, Grandma had said she wanted me to inherit the apartment because, in her words, Daniel is the only one who sees this place as a home instead of just another piece of real estate. Mrs. Wong also said Grandma believed Rachel would have sold it immediately. Hearing that finally lifted the guilt I had been carrying for months. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. She was never confused. She was never manipulated. She made her decision after a lifetime of watching, understanding, and loving the people in her family. I also started a new tradition by hosting a family dinner in the apartment once every month. Not everyone comes. Rachel and her immediate family still stay away, but the relatives who do come always seem to find comfort in being back in Grandma's home. Last month, my cousin Jessica brought her newborn baby to meet everyone. As I watched her gently rock the baby in Grandma's favorite chair, it finally hit me what Grandma had wanted all along. She wanted her home to remain a place where family gathered, where old memories were cherished and new ones could be made. Owning the apartment has not been easy financially. The property taxes and homeowners association fees are expensive, and I have had to make major changes to my budget to keep up with them. But whenever I remember Rachel saying I was hanging on to nothing more than an expensive weekend house, I think about something Grandma used to tell me. A home is never about how much it's worth, Daniel. It's about what happens inside its walls. Last month, while sorting through the desk in her bedroom, I found one of Grandma's journals. She had written something about each of her grandchildren, sharing her thoughts, her hopes, and what she had noticed about us over the years. About Rachel, she wrote, "She's a wonderful girl, but she's always searching for the quickest path to happiness. I hope one day she understands that love is not measured by how often you visit or how close you live. It's measured by your presence and your intentions." Then I found what she had written about me. Daniel understands stories. He knows that homes hold memories, that some places become sacred, and that the past can live beside the present. I know my apartment will be safe with him. I cried as I read those words. For the first time, I completely understood that none of this had ever been about who deserved the apartment more. It had always been about Grandma truly knowing each of her grandchildren and trusting the person she believed would protect what mattered most to her. I decided to create a small memorial for Grandma in the building's community room. I put together a display with photographs and a book where people could write memories about her life. Several neighbors added their own pictures and stories. Even members of the building staff shared memories of her kindness, generosity, and sense of humor. It slowly became a beautiful tribute to the incredible life she had lived. As for Rachel, I have finally accepted the distance between us. If she ever wants to repair our relationship, the door is still open, but I am no longer waiting for that day. Some wounds heal slowly and others never completely disappear. One thing I have learned through all of this is that protecting your own peace is not selfish. Sometimes it is necessary. The apartment belongs to me now, both legally and emotionally, but I have never thought of it as a prize. I see it as something Grandma trusted me to care for. Every Sunday after I finish talking with my mother, keeping that tradition alive, I sit in Grandma's chair and tell her about my week. I know she cannot answer, but somehow, sitting in the home she loves so much, surrounded by the life she created, I still feel close to her. Rachel was wrong about one thing. Loving someone has never been about showing up every single day. It is about being fully present when you are there, seeing them for who they really are and respecting their wishes even when other people disagree with them. Grandma knew I understood that. In the end, that was all that mattered. The apartment is more than inheritance to me. It is my responsibility, my safe place, and my connection to the woman who helped shape the person I became. Looking back, I am grateful for everything that happened, even the painful parts, because they taught me what truly matters. The greatest gift is never the thing you inherit. It is the love that inspired someone to leave it to you. Before I knew it, an entire year had passed. Even now, on Sunday afternoons, I still catch myself reaching for my phone to call Grandma before remembering that those conversations now happen only in my thoughts. Life has finally become peaceful again, a kind of peace I once believed I would never find. Olivia and I officially made the apartment our permanent home after I switched almost entirely to remote work. Together we found the balance Grandma always believed a home should have, honoring the past without becoming trapped by it. We painted several rooms in warm colors I know Grandma would have loved, restored the original hardwood floors, and turned the small spare bedroom into a reading room filled with her books, my growing collection, and a comfortable chair beside the window where the afternoon sunlight still falls exactly the way it did when I was a little boy. Grandma's recipe box still sits in its usual place on the kitchen counter. Every Sunday evening, Olivia and I choose one of her handwritten recipes and cook it together. Some dinners turn out exactly as they should, while others become complete disasters that leave us laughing for the rest of the night. Either way, every recipe reminds us that love is never preserved in objects alone. It survives through the traditions that continue bringing people together. Mrs. Wong has become family to us in every way except by blood. She never misses our weekly tea, and almost every visit she shares another story about Grandma that makes me realize I am still discovering new parts of the woman I thought I knew so well. The memorial display in the building's community room has continued to grow. Neighbors, former co-workers, old friends from church, and even people I had never met have contributed photographs and handwritten memories. Those pages now fill an entire scrapbook resting beneath Grandma's portrait. Reading those memories showed me something I will never forget. Every person leaves behind countless versions of themselves in the hearts of the people who knew them, and Grandma's true legacy was never about money or property. It was the kindness she gave to others and the impact she quietly had on so many lives. The monthly family dinners also became something I never expected. Somehow, they helped repair wounds that I thought might never heal. Not everyone comes, but the people who do have slowly started remembering what family gatherings felt like before anger and resentment took over. Jessica's young daughter has become completely attached to Grandma's old rocking chair. Every time she visits, she climbs into it with her stuffed rabbit in her arms, and everyone smiles because we remember another little child who once sat in that same chair listening to Grandma's bedtime stories. Tyler still insists on bringing dessert to every gathering, even though after a full year of trying, baking is still the one thing he cannot do without making the smoke detector go off. Uncle James continues telling the same retirement stories like they are brand new, and somehow we all just laugh instead of getting annoyed. The happiness has returned to these walls, not because we forgot the hurt, but because we finally learned how to carry those painful memories together instead of letting them separate us. Financially, keeping the apartment has still required sacrifices. The property taxes keep increasing, unexpected repairs continue showing up, and maintaining an older building is far from cheap. But every challenge has reminded me of something Grandma understood years before I did. A home is not valuable because of the price someone else is willing to pay for it. A home matters because of the moments, love, and memories created inside it. When I look around now, I no longer see a costly apartment in the middle of Boston. I see birthday celebrations, quiet talks over cups of tea, afternoons spent reading near the window while rain falls outside, holiday decorations that somehow become more meaningful every year, and photographs that capture moments future generations will someday treasure. Rachel and I also found a way forward, although our story did not end the way most people expected. For almost 11 months, we did not exchange a single word. Then one day, instead of another angry message or accusation, I received a handwritten letter from her. She did not ask for the apartment. She did not challenge Grandma's decision. She simply apologized. She explained that therapy had forced her to face things she had avoided for years, including the truth that her anger was not really about losing the apartment. It was about realizing that she had not been as present in Grandma's life as she wanted to believe. Rachel admitted that she had mistaken living nearby for truly being there. She also admitted that jealousy had caused her to rewrite our family history until she almost convinced herself that her version was the truth. Reading her words did not erase the pain she had caused, but it helped me finally release the last bit of anger I was still holding on to. A few weeks later, we agreed to meet at a small, quiet cafe halfway between our homes. We sat there for almost 3 hours. We did not talk about lawyers, court hearings, or inheritance. We talked about Grandma. We laughed about memories that only cousins could understand. We cried over moments we had both been too hurt and stubborn to share before. We accepted that we could never get back the year we lost, but we also realized we did not have to lose every year that came after it. We are not as close as we were before, and maybe we never will be, but we found something more important than pretending everything was fine. We found honesty. Last Christmas, Rachel brought her children to one of our family dinners for the first time since everything happened. I watched them decorate Grandma's old Christmas tree, while Olivia helped prepare food in the kitchen and Mrs. Wong moved around the apartment taking care of everyone like she was an honorary aunt. Looking around that room, I finally understood what Grandma had truly been protecting when she chose to leave the apartment to me. She was not giving me a piece of property. She was choosing someone to protect a home that was always meant to bring people together. The apartment was never the prize Rachel believed it was. It was never about the size, the value, or the inheritance. It was about carrying forward the love that had filled those rooms for decades and making sure that love continued long after Grandma was gone. Every Sunday evening after everyone leaves and the apartment becomes quiet again, I still sit in Grandma's favorite chair with a cup of tea and tell her about my week. I know she is not there to answer me, but somehow the silence no longer feels empty. It feels peaceful. I think Grandma would smile if she could see this place now. A home filled once again with conversations, children, laughter, good food, and imperfect people who are all trying their best to love each other. In the end, I realized the greatest inheritance Grandma gave me was never the deed to an apartment. It was the lesson that a family's real wealth is not measured by what gets passed down. It is measured by the compassion, honesty, forgiveness, and memories that continue living inside the walls we choose to call home.